Imagine you're a forensic geneticist and you discover a dark genetic link in your family, as well as clues that may lead you to find pieces from the lost Lewis Chessmen. Our guest today is Sara Winokur, whose book is fiction, but it is inspired by real events and science. As a geneticist-turned-author and a descendant of the infamous Barbary pirate Jan Janzoon. Did I say that right? Janzoon?
That's correct. Yes.
Sara masterfully blends inspiration from her own ancestry into the book, Ivory Bones, The Lewis Chessmen Murders. Her book makes you wonder how much our own DNA really influences who we are, and what would happen if the real Lewis Chessmen pieces, the missing ones, were discovered. Hello, Sara. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Nice to see you. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. This is going to be good. It's always exciting when somebody who has the expertise and experience infuses that into their writing, because you are or worked as a geneticist, a scientist. Can you give us your backstory a little bit? Tell us a little bit about how you infuse that into your writing.
Sure. So I really truly believe that in this life, one can do anything and be anything. And I had worked as a genetic researcher for 25 years. And at that point, I decided to take on a new challenge. And that was to write a series of murder mysteries. And this might seem like a stretch, but actually scientific research and writing a murder mystery have a lot to do with one another, because they're both puzzles. And you've got to find the pieces that all fit together to find a solution. So it wasn't as much of a stretch as you might think.
I love it. I love it. And when it's more plausible, when the science is realistic, it's so much more immersive too. As a reader, we enjoy it so much more.
Yeah, I did incorporate some genetics into the book in a very fun and entertaining way. The protagonist actually is a forensic geneticist that uses Iceland's DNA database to solve crimes.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay. So, and this again is inspired loosely by your own research into your own DNA. And you're actually related to a Barbary pirate?
Yes. Who knew? So the Barbary pirates in the 1600s raided many islands, such as Ireland and Iceland, and took a number, quite like hundreds actually, of captives back to North Africa and sold them as slaves. And the mastermind of one of these raids on Iceland turns out to be my ancestor. So at first I was very appalled by this. But then in thinking about it more, I can't really be responsible for the actions of someone 400 years ago. I just don't think that that's inherent in my DNA.
Right.
Let's hope not.
Right. As long as you don't make me walk the plank, Sara.
Yes, I'll refrain.
I know you want to, don't you? Every once in a while, you're like, "All right,
never."
No. We make fun and we, joke about it. There is something about pirates, though. The idea of being a pirate on the open sea has a bit of a romance to it, when the reality is they were very barbaric. And even today, the pirates who are out there, they're not really nice guys and fun to be around.
And I think actually that's where that word comes from, barbaric, from Barbary pirates.
Oh, it might.
Yeah. Anyway, just a thought.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's some romance, but it's really, the reality is quite cruel.
And when we think about our genetics, I know actually in talking to you and researching a little bit about the pirates and where they came from, and even Jan and his name, it sounds like it's from the Netherlands, and I actually have Dutch heritage. So I was kind of thinking, oh, I could be related to this guy too, or to
I
somebody.
think you could be.
It's a very
Because
small country.
he actually was Dutch.
Mm-hmm.
He was born in Holland. So you and I might be related too.
We might be related.
Who knows? Yeah.
And should one feel, though, that they have any kind, when you have a connection like that, to your point, should we feel embarrassed or ashamed of the sins of our fathers, so to speak?
I think that we cannot take responsibility for them. Even honestly, the protagonist in this book, Brynja Pálsdóttir, her own biological father was a serial killer, and that plays into the heritage theme of the book as well, because she's really fearful of having children because she fears that they might inherit in some way her father's evil genes. But in truth, I think genes obviously have a lot to do with our physical being, and probably to some degree to our behavior. But I think that our choices and our morals are much more dominant.
It's the old nature versus nurture.
Yeah, that's right.
Debate.
I'd have to give nurture the heads up, the leg up.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the protagonist? Because we met her originally in your first book too. Maybe if you could set the stage for Double Blind and how that leads into Ivory Bones.
Sure. So in Double Blind, without going into a lot of detail, she had a twin brother, and at age 7, he disappeared. And the entire mystery surrounds trying to figure out what happened to him and who had really kidnapped him. And I don't want to give away anything, but she uses the DNA database once again to locate him, and in the process finds out that her own father would do anything to keep her from finding him. But I don't want to disclose anything further.
Right.
So
and we catch up with her in Ivory Bones, and she gets this mysterious diary kind of plopped on her desk. Can you set the stage for us?
Sure. So she has a colleague in New York, and this in New York, some skeletal remains were found next to a diary written in Icelandic, along with one of these Lewis Chessmen, which we'll talk about in a minute. And so, of course, her colleague doesn't speak Icelandic, and so she sends this diary to Brynja, who is Icelandic, to translate the diary. Shall I go into more what the diary?
Yeah. Tell us about, because the diary itself is inspired by real events too. So
that's right. So the diary itself was written by a woman named Anna. I won't tell you her last name because all Icelandic last names will take up the whole interview. No, so Anna is actually a fictional character, but the contents of her diary are absolutely historically accurate. And they follow her capture in Iceland and her journey to North Africa, her experience of being a slave there, and then her further journey to New Amsterdam, to the New World as a servant. So all of that is historically accurate. And it turned out, of course, the colleagues in New York did not know this, but it turned out that there were clues as to where the missing Lewis Chessmen were within the diary. And so yeah, we could talk about the Lewis Chessmen, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love the fact that your books are, especially this one, is now expansive. So, double blind, set in Iceland, and you have an Icelandic protagonist, and you
That's
have
right.
that affinity for Iceland. But then you're kind of traveling the world. You're expanding the world of Sara Winokur, if you will,
That's
to
right.
include elements of Africa and the New World as well. And yeah, let's get into these Lewis Chessmen because these guys are real as well.
Yes.
They were actually found. There's an actual Lewis Chessman or a couple of pieces that were found. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Let me show you the cover of my book.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, it's Ivory Bones, the Lewis Chessmen murders. And you can see on the cover, these are the actual pieces, most of which are in the British Museum. You can see, I think, that they have very expressive human faces. They're probably the most famous chess set in the world. They've been featured in Harry Potter movies and Agatha Christie novels. They were carved in the 12th century. It's debatable as to whether they were carved in Iceland or in Norway, but essentially they ended up off the island of Lewis in Scotland, which is why they're called the Lewis Chessmen. So they're extremely valuable. They're nearly 1,000 years old. And in 2019, there were 5 missing pieces. But in 2019, one of the this is what's called a berserker. That's one of the pieces. Was found in an old dresser in Edinburgh, and the gentleman that found it put it up for auction, and it sold for almost $1 million. So they're extremely valuable. Uh, you know, very unique.
Yeah. And to your point, they do have great expressions. And I think that might be their appeal, especially for something that's so ancient, to see that
Exactly.
personality transcend through time like that.
And I'll show you again. It's called a berserker, and this is one of Odin's warriors. And you can see when they went into battle, they used to take hallucinogens and mushrooms and drink mead. And you can see this kind of crazed creature like biting down on his sword. And he's called a berserker, and that's where we get the word going berserk. So
yeah, when they were in battle, they would just go berserk. They were a force
that's
to be
right.
reckoned with because of, to your point, they're basically tripping at the time.
Yeah. Yes. They're wild.
That's rather terrifying. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one piece was found in 2019, which now leaves 4 missing pieces. Another piece was found, and this part is fiction, with the diary in New York, another berserker. And so there's still 3 missing pieces. And as I mentioned, they're extremely valuable. They probably each would go for $2 million at this point. And so there are a lot of competing interests in terms of trying to find them. So Bridget wants to find them because she feels they really belong to Iceland and its cultural heritage. But there are also some more evil intents, including someone that's willing to commit murder to find them. So she's got to find them before this person creates any more havoc.
I love the way that you build this immersive world in your books. It's mystery, it's thriller, it's real historical inspiration as well as the real science. And by the way, I just want to add to, so for the folks that are only listening to the show, because we're talking about, Sara was holding up a little statuette of the berserker. On her book cover as well, you can see the Lewis Chessmen. So I do encourage you, if you're wondering, what are they talking about? What does that look like? Please look up her book and look at the cover so you can see just how expressive these little guys are. I'm curious how the Lewis Chessmen connect to the novel's theme. How have you woven in what they are, what they represent, into the theme of your story?
Well, I think, the game of chess itself represents a lot of life strategies
Mhm.
and how to deal with challenge and adversity and how to sort of read the thoughts of people or pieces surrounding you. Um, and it requires a lot of patience and skill and strategy. Um, so I think that ties into uh, both of the main characters, which are Brinja, the forensic scientist, and Anna, the captive, because they both face adversity and they've got to strategize their way into making the most of their situation and
And yeah,
protecting those that are close to them.
your story as well, Sarah, reflects that in many ways. How do you feel that the diary, Anna, how her journey, her personal journey, is in some ways mirrored to your own personal journey?
Right. So I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer quite a few years ago. I'm perfectly healthy now. But, I had a spate of time where I was faced with this challenge. Um, I was fortunate enough to survive, but I feel like I also thrived in a way because it taught me about a much greater appreciation for life and love. And I just have a much greater sense of gratitude um, and trying to reach out to help others. And both Anna and Brinja in the book, I poured a lot of those feelings I had at that time into their own um, experience. So I feel like I really bonded with the characters.
Yeah, they're very much an extension of yourself. And that authenticity is what makes great literature great, because we can feel that as the
Yeah.
reader. And you are a traveler. You travel a lot. You've been to Iceland. I understand you even
Yes.
have a special pair of mittens. Is that
Yes.
right?
So in doing research for both of my books, actually,
Mhm.
um, I I did travel to Iceland a number of times because, as an American citizen, I wanted to, have the book itself be authentic culturally and historically. So I went there several times, and I met actually the former first lady, and she gave me a pair of mittens. I'm going to show them to you.
Oh, yes. Oh,
They were actually
wow.
knitted by her husband, the president's mother. And I just noticed today that on the back of them, this sort of resembles a chessboard, I think.
Oh, it
So I
does. It's
so
like
it's
a checkerboard. Yeah.
it's a little bit prophetic, I think. Anyway, so those are very special to me.
Oh, I bet. Not a lot of people can say that they've got mittens that were knitted by the former first lady's mother-in-law of Iceland.
Exactly, you got it.
Yeah, I had to jump a little bit there, but we
You
got
got it.
that out. I'm
Yeah.
curious too, in writing Double Blind to now we have Ivory Bones. As a
Right.
writer, how has your process of
Right.
writing evolved over time?
Yeah. Um, so when I wrote my first book, Ivory Bones, no, Double Blind, sorry, uh, I just sort of dove in. I had a concept of, I knew who the characters were, I knew how it was going to end, but I just sort of dove in. And I know a lot of authors can do this, but I found that it was more difficult just to start on page one and just type away and get to the end, because then I would come up with a great idea later in the book and have to incorporate it earlier in the book. So this time around, I outlined from start to finish so that I wouldn't have to jump around And it made a mystery can be very complex, and all the pieces of the puzzle have to fit together very accurately. And so I found it was much easier to outline for me. I know some authors prefer that, some don't, but that's my style going forward.
You're like, I'm done pantsing. I'm done flying
Yeah.
by the seat of my pants.
That's right.
I'm a scientist. I want things organized and laid out in a
Yeah.
certain way.
And because of that, I think that this latest book, Ivory Bones, has a great pace, and it flows.
In adding a lot of the science into it too, how did you feel when you were doing the research and you were putting that real science into it? Can you talk about that a little bit, as far as, you know, how your background basically influenced your writing?
Yeah. So as I said, I did want to incorporate, genetics, because scientists often aren't the best at communicating what they do. And I know that a lot of people sort of, back off when they um, are reading something about genetics or learning something about genetics. So I just tried to take little bits and pieces and explain it in a way, to the layperson who has had no background in genetics, just to make it accessible, and not only accessible, but entertaining, and sort of a basis of how the protagonist uses these techniques to solve crimes.
Michael Crichton did the same thing with Jurassic Park. You remind me a bit of that, because your writing and his, and by the way, I gotta say, Jurassic Park is one of my all-time top 5 favorite books. But he did the same thing, where he's explaining just enough of the genetics so that you understand how this could even be plausible, and you very much do the same thing.
Yeah, right. So it's not dry textbook genetics. It's light, so that it's you learn a little bit, but you're engaged in the mystery because of it.
You learn just enough to understand the mystery and want to keep flipping those pages. That's what a good thriller, something that's based on history and science, that's what it does. So props for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What advice might you have for new writers, for somebody who's just starting out, who's thinking, okay, I'm a scientist. Can I put this into my book? What would you say to somebody who's about ready to start their own writing journey?
Or for anyone starting their own journey? Sometimes it can feel rather intimidating. I always go back to a quote of Eleanor Roosevelt, when she said, "Do something every day that scares you." And by that, she meant push yourself, challenge yourself, because that's how you're going to grow. And of course, you're going to, maybe you'll make some mistakes along the way, but you'll learn from them. And, by doing something that scares you, I'm not talking about like jumping out of an airplane at 15,000 feet, if that's not something you want to do. But if you want to write a novel, just dive, just start. And I would just encourage that, because of taking on any new challenge in life, that's going to, enhance your life and make you and hopefully others grow a bit.
It's fear that really gives us an opportunity to grow, to your point.
That's right.
In many ways. And I think sometimes in our modern world, where we see folks on social media who are perfect, right? They're Insta perfect. Yes. They have these beautiful lives. Everybody puts out their very best when they're putting it online and sharing with others. And sometimes it's easy to forget that making mistakes, being a little messy, that's okay, right?
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Sara Winokur, tell everybody where they can go to find you on social media, find your website, and of course, find your books.
Right. So I do have a website. It's pretty straightforward. It's my name, Sara Winokur. There's no H in Sarah. It's Sara. Winokur at .com. Sorry. I'm also on Instagram, Sara_Winokur, and on Facebook. The book can be found on Amazon, both in Kindle versions and paperback version. You can also find it at Barnes & Noble or your local library, hopefully.
Yeah. I always recommend if you're a library person, go into your local library and request the book.
Right.
Sarah's books are available by request. They can order it. And then that way, not only do you as the reader get a chance to enjoy Sarah's book, but then it's on their shelves for other readers down the line to enjoy it as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great.
Sara Winokur, author of Ivory Bones. Thank you so much for being with us today. It was a pleasure talking to you.
You too. You as well. Thank you.
You bet. You bet. And thank you, everybody, for joining us as well on the Books That Make You show. You can find us on our website. That is booksthatmakeyou.com, where you can discover more amazing books and authors, just like Sara. Sign up for our Webby Award-winning Books That Make You newsletter. And you can follow us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and of course on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, ring the bell, get notifications, and never miss an episode of the Books That Make You show. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you who you are.
Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.